Paul Rudnick is here. He is the award-winning author of such plays as Jeffrey, I Hate Hamlet, and The Naked Eye. He's also garnered success for his films, Addams Family Values, and In and Out. His latest play, The Most Fabulous Story Ever Told, explores an unusual premise. What if God had created Adam and Steve instead of Adam and Eve? Ben Brantley of the New York Times said, line by line, Paul Rudnick may be the funniest writer for the stage in the United States today, and he confirms that reputation with this play. I am pleased to have Mr. Rudnick here on this program once again. Welcome back, sir.
Oh, thank you so much.
Nice to have you here. Now tell me, in your mind, where did the idea for this come from?
Well, it came from that remark that a lot of biblical fundamentalists like to use, where they say God didn't create Adam and Steve.
He created Adam and
Eve. Exactly, and that's about the extent of biblical fundamentalist repartee, I think. So I thought, take them at their word. What would have happened if? You know, and I thought about the first two lesbians, Jane and Mabel.
Yeah.
So, and the story kind of unreeled from there. I also wanted to explore issues of faith and God and why they're actually some of the most provocative questions around. I think sex has become so commonplace, you know, thanks to Monica and the cigar, that now religion seems one of the only taboos left, one of the only sort of socially explosive questions.
Now, what are the explosive questions?
Well, I think if you were at a cocktail party in Manhattan or anywhere else for that matter, and you asked people about their sex lives, they would have no problems. You would get their full therapist's readouts, all far too much information.
And then I did this, and then he did that.
Exactly. But if you ask them, do you believe in God? I think people would become very uncomfortable and perhaps embarrassed and probably very funny, because I think it's a very intimate question.
And so what do you say when they ask you, do you believe in God?
I say you'll just have to see The Most Fabulous Story Ever Told. My answers don't come cheap.
Here is my theory. Your God is the theater. I mean, some sense that has been your God.
Oh, absolutely. And even beyond that, comedy. I think when I get to stand at the back of a theater and hear an audience roar at especially the brilliant cast of this play, it's a transcendent experience. I think that is as close to God as I ever need to be. It's why live theater will never die. You get that sense where the audience shoots the performers in the play even higher, and you think, my God, these are human beings at their best.
But I stole this from one of these profiles of you, so here comes. What are you going to do when St. Peter says, by the way, Mr. Rudnick, I have a cassette here where you said you didn't believe in God?
Well, it's funny. I was thinking about this because Jerry Falwell the other day also said that the Antichrist is alive and among us today.
And he is.
And he said that he was a Jewish person. And so, of course, I was terribly flattered. And then Falwell, I think today actually apologized to Jews everywhere for this, but did not retract. No, he said he is still Jewish. But so I think, I don't know what I'll say when I get to St. Peter. I'll probably... Just kidding. You know me.
Just Paul.
Exactly.
I think of a funny line, and there I go.
That's right. So I figure, my God, I'd hope he'd be terribly forgiving. Although I would imagine most of the other people I know will not be around at that particular pearly gate. So I
probably
think
not.
Yeah.
Now, so you start off with Adam and Steve.
Right.
And what happens in the first act?
The entire Old Testament, or at least the good parts, the highlights, the juicy stuff. So we go from the Garden of Eden, through the Ark, through the expulsion from Egypt, all the way to a pretty spectacular nativity. And then the second act actually makes a leap to contemporary times in Manhattan, because I wanted to explore how these stories might have begun and what impact they have on people's lives nowadays. You know, what we've made of the Bible, whether it still has relevance, because I think for some people it absolutely does. And those people, the play satirizes everyone, but I think faith can also be something that's very genuine and very impressive. So I wanted to really play every possible angle.
And when do we get to see the lesbians?
They arrive pretty darn fast.
Do they really?
Yes, they're in the garden too.
Because Steve and Adam are saying, we're the first. And, and the two lesbians whose names are
Jane and Mabel.
Jane and Mabel are saying, well, not so fast.
Exactly. They're claiming it was a women's garden, although they did have...
They meet in the Garden of Eden.
They meet in the Garden of Eden, although the women claimed they had special nights for other creatures with discussion groups. So they're a bit more PC than Adam and Steve. But eventually everyone makes friends, and they encounter animals and pharaohs and you name it.
Is it easy to make comedy out of religion.
Yes, because I think religion is humanity at its most fervent, and its most impassioned, and its most sincere, and that makes for rich comic territory because people are very exposed, they're very vulnerable, which also can make for a lot of real emotion, which I hope the play also has, that it's human beings choosing to believe or choosing not to believe, and these are questions that you know, whatever your religious position, you have to make up your mind. So it's, that makes people funny.
In the end, you find out you're talking about love.
Absolutely, because I think that's if I have any other faith, it's romance, which I'm sure is just as lunatic as any, you know, Quran or Bible or Torah, but I think it somehow is the most positive form of religion for me. I think that's something that really, oh my God, shouldn't go wrong.
There has not been a reaction. Terrence McNally, what was the name of his play?
Corpus Christi.
Corpus Christi got a huge reaction, a kind of react against it. Not on the part of critics, but on the part of people who somehow got up in arms about it. Yes?
Yes.
This hasn't happened with you.
No, I think
and
some
why
of
is
those...
it different?
Right, well, those protesters, I think sometimes they have a little bit of trouble finding their way through downtown streets. I think they were a little exhausted after the Corpus Christi protests. I think the bus just took them to Atlantic City with a cup full of quarters after that. Yeah. But I think also Terrence's play focused on Jesus, and that's more of a real flashpoint for that community. Yeah. And Jesus just didn't happen to wander into my particular testament. But I know the theater has gotten some calls from a group that's very ardent about Our Lady of Fatima. And what they seem to want to know is, why won't Paul Rudnick write a play about Our Lady of Fatima? So I'm going to see what I can do.
There may be some material there.
Exactly. Yeah. I think she sounds swell.
Now, coming back to the theater, was this something that inexorably you're going to do because...
Oh, absolutely. I don't even think of it as coming back. I couldn't stay away. I'm an addict. I mean, that's, I think, my greatest pleasure. My highest highs have been in the theater. You get to be in the same room as the rest of the creative team. You get to be there with the actors, with the director, and it all happens as a group. And movies are such a big deal, and there's so much money involved and so many different skills that it's very rare to get that kind of family feeling.
But you did very well writing movies.
Oh, I've had a blast. I mean, I had a wonderful time on In and Out and the Addams movies and on the film of Jeffrey, so I can't complain. So it's actually, it's a joy to be able to bounce back and forth. You didn't get credit for the Addams Family for the first one. For the first one. Even though Scott Rubin gave you lots of credit. But you didn't get a line credit because you two are long friends. Yes. And then you wrote the entirety of the second one, yeah? I did. Are you writing another screenplay? I am. I have a movie that actually is coming out in the fall called Isn't She Great? That's about the author Jacqueline Suzanne. And Irving Mansfield. And Irving Mansfield, her husband and publicist. This is based on somebody's book about them? It's based on a wonderful memoir by Michael Korda. Oh, I saw that appeared in the New Yorker. Yeah, and it was so affectionate and so funny that it just kind of cried out. And it's directed by Andrew Bergman. She was such an interesting character because she was extraordinary. Yeah, because she was actually far gutsier than people realized. She was a woman who... Far gutsier than they realized? Well, because she was very outrageous. She defined gutsiness. She did, but I think people didn't realize for her entire fame, for her full career, she had breast cancer, she had an autistic child, none of which she would exploit or even reveal. You know, I think if she lived now, people would expect her to be on, you know, Oprah every other day. But she was pretty brave. But she was out there hustling. I mean, she defined the modern book tour. Oh, absolutely. She really created modern publishing in many ways. She turned herself into a brand name so that people would buy the new Jackie Suzanne. And I think that's led to Stephen King and Tom Clancy and all of those John Grisham and the rest of these people. Exactly, the real trademark authors. Trademark names, and everybody's waiting for the next Grisham novel as they were waiting for the... do you ever want to act? God forbid. No, I'm too in awe of the great actors that I'm surrounded by. When I see what they can do, I wouldn't dream of it. And I always feel so spoiled that I have these troops of players. I'm like the little prince who sits there and says, entertain me. But you also bring with you the same team, or some of the same team, that is in this, was also in Jeffrey, yes? Oh, absolutely. Chris Ashley, who's directed almost all my plays and is a genius and my absolute partner in crime and comedy. So I would not make a move without him. And he just, he also sets such a wonderful rehearsal atmosphere and such real freedom for everyone involved that he's indispensable. Now, do you use the language of the theater somehow in this play? Oh, absolutely. It's very much a theatrical trip. Well, it's a way of using a red velvet curtain and using some elements of even high school plays where everyone's pushing on pieces of the manger set. And just those wonderful transformations that are only possible on stage where suddenly someone's in a turban and they're a wise man or they're, you know, the king of Egypt. And you just have that audience joy when they're using their imaginations and a few yards of sequin fabric.
Before I get to this, you moved to Broadway or you're already on Broadway?
We're off Broadway at the Minetta Lane Theater.
Yeah, are you moving or you just...
No, we just moved from
you moved from downtown to...
From the New York Theater Workshop.
To
the Minetta Lane Theater.
All right. And here is this is where Jane and Mabel, the aforementioned Jane and Mabel, come to Adam and Steve's house for dinner. From the stage, roll tape.
Gotta keep up. Why?
We made it from our own grave.
Jane and Mabel, Monday. Well, for anyone, some of these little things that Adam made.
What are they?
Well, I had this idea. What if before the actual meal we all got to taste some smaller, more complicated food?
We already do that.
On a cracker? Now, after the garden, I know that we all thought that maybe we weren't going to make it, that because of what I did... No. Because of my wanting a revelation, we were doomed. But as of today, we have all been together for 400 years, and I think we look great!
And you know what our secret is? Loving each other.
And staying out of the sun. Exercise.
Of course, not dying.
And I would just like to mention some of the wonderful things we've invented, including the lever, the pulley system, and the wheel. Thank you, ladies.
And let's not forget shampoo and conditioner and woman.
A couple of things about you. When you were writing comedy, when you're writing these, what's the process? How does it take place?
Oh my God, I live to rewrite, so I go through endless drafts, and I also love to work on the play in front of the audience because that response is so essential and is such an education for me, because if something isn't quite working, if I can make it funnier, I will be back there with my pencil and my Bic pen and my legal pad, because that's what comedy is about. In fact, even since the move from the workshop to the Minetta Lane, I've taken the opportunity to hone the play even a bit further. But in the early stages, I'll do any number of drafts, and then I'll dare to show it to Chris Ashley, my director, and to, shudder while I wait for his response.
Are you actually nervous about that?
Oh, terrified. But that's why I trust him absolutely. So I think, okay, he'll let me down gently. And then I'll rewrite a few more times, and then we'll have a reading maybe in my apartment, where we'll just invite some actors over. And then I'll rewrite about 8 more times, and then we'll have a larger reading at a theater. And so it's a very gradual... Well, we did a workshop of this also up at the Williamstown Theater Festival this past summer. So that was another great opportunity to take a look.
But it starts with you putting words on a page.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? And you sit there and you think funny or you think character.
Oh, character. Well, I never intend to write comedy or satire or anything of the sort. I think I'm writing absolute reality. And which actually I find
your reality is funny, though. I mean, your reality is that you have the mind that sees the humor.
I try to. I think that's very much a legacy from my family, which really used humor as a real balance wheel and as a kind of weapon against self-pity, especially. I think if you can make something funny, why not? All the better.
There's a poignant story about you in that your dad was dying, and you had written your first thing, and you wanted him to see it, correct?
Yeah, this was actually Jeffrey. This was
about Jeffrey.
Yeah. And he died before the play was produced, but he was able to read a draft of it before he died.
He read it. I couldn't figure out whether, when I read that story, whether you actually had some actors come in and just sort of acted, or you just had him read it.
Yeah,
and he loved it. He liked it and thought it was funny.
He did very much. I was so very grateful that he was able to read it before he left. But it's funny because even on Most Fabulous Story, there was an amazing woman named Helen Merrill, who'd been my agent and a very dear friend since the beginning of my career. And she also died just as the play was about to go into rehearsal. And she was dying of cancer. And actually, Chris Ashley, our director, read the play aloud to her on her deathbed, basically, because she wanted to keep working and she wanted to keep laughing. And it's one of those mixed blessings where I was so thrilled that she wanted to hear the play, and it was very sad that this was as far as she'd be able to come with it. But it's amazing just to, my God, you start to realize how little time you have.
Oh, boy, tell me. When you think about, the theme of this is homosexuality and spirituality and homosexuality, yes?
That's redundant.
For you it is.
Exactly.
Is it because you're gay, because you understand all that much of what the gay lifestyle is, because you understand so many interesting people you know who are gay and the way they think about ideas, about their own homosexuality, about so many things, that you continue to write characters who are gay?
It's funny. I don't ever set out to say I'm writing a gay play.
Right.
I'm writing exclusively gay characters. I write about people who I consider wildly
Interesting and
entertaining,
funny, yeah.
people who will move me, people who will make me laugh. And I would never dream of condescending to either the characters or the audience to say, this is only for one group of people. This is about a marginal or minority experience. I think gay people's lives are every bit as diverse as straight people's lives. And I also have straight characters in this play and all of my work as well. So it's never a question.
Hetero.
Exactly. I think, I have a gracious sympathy for your people. But I never pigeonhole the work that way, and I would hope that, and I think when audiences come, it's funny, we've had such hugely mixed audiences, every age, race, sexual preference group, gender, and it never divides along those kind of party lines. I think funny is funny, so that I would never want to think that I was being that exclusive. I am absolutely delighted to be gay, and I consider it a gift to be able to write gay characters, and it's wonderful to have that kind of fresh material that hasn't been covered a million times. Also, I think what's I found, especially with this play, is that sometimes when you use characters who haven't been traditionally included, everyone gets a fresh perspective. That if you were writing just about Adam and Eve, the audience, gay and straight, would say, we've heard these stories a million times, but when you use gay characters, African American characters, Asian American characters, suddenly it's a new story for everyone, and you can explore the big topics, life, love, death, the existence of God, in ways that get everyone thinking. So it's not, for me, it's not about gay or straight, it's about the characters and what they're going through. And I love that we all go through the same things.
Well said. The play is called The Most Fabulous Story Ever Told. Paul Rudnick, currently running at the Minetta Lane Theater. Thank you, my friend.
Great thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us. See you next time.